Does exploring and camping in the backcountry by yourself make you nervous? That's all right. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. In this video, I'm going to talk about some of the ways that I prepare for things that can go wrong when I am out by myself. And this video is not intended to be comprehensive or the final word on any of this. This is just what I have done. I would recommend watching other videos as well. There are a lot of videos on solo backpacking in particular that have a lot of good tips on being prepared. Now, the first thing I do is before I even leave home, I inform somebody about the area that I'm planning to be in. I usually let my mom know. I often also let my kids know at least the general vicinity of where I plan to be, so that if by chance I don't come back home, at least they've got some sort of idea of where to tell people to look for me. Now, one way to help make sure you don't get into trouble in the first place is just to make sure your vehicle is adequately prepared to be out there. Do you have appropriate tires? Do you have underbody protection? Do you actually have four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive or something that's going to make sure your vehicle can get through unpredictable road conditions? Have you checked the oil? Have you checked your air filter? Is everything maintained and running properly? The last thing you want is to be out in the middle of nowhere and have your vehicle break down. That's not only going to be a very expensive tow bill, depending on the weather scenario, it could be a life-threatening situation. And in a similar vein, are you carrying extra fuel? Now, it is extremely rare that I need extra fuel. I try to plan my trips so that I can get to gas every single time. Extra fuel for me is less about extending my exploring range and more of a what if scenario. What if I get 3/4 of the way to my next gas station and it turns out the road is washed out and I have to backtrack all the way back to the previous gas station or reroute in some way that is going to go beyond what the fuel tank in my truck can handle. Now, there are a lot of ways you can carry extra fuel. A lot of people in this realm use Rotopacks or various versions of Rotopacks, and those are a good solution. I did use one of those on my Forester previously. In my situation, I had to carry it flat on the roof of my Forester, which worked, but I always had an issue with my Rotopacks container swelling up in warm weather and needing to go up, disconnect it, turn it upright, vent it, and put it back down. I think the Rotopacks are much easier to use if you've got a scenario where you can mount them vertically. I ultimately went with the steel jerry cans when I was building my bumper. This gives me 10 extra gallons in a fairly compact space. While good steel jerry cans are not cheap, neither are Rotopacks. Now, you can carry less expensive plastic containers, and I used to use those also, but I had a constant issue with fuel wanting to ooze out of the caps on those. But whatever you use, having some extra fuel is really a good idea, even if you never ever end up using it. Another way to avoid trouble in the first place, and I kind of learned this one the hard way, is to avoid areas that are a little too close to town. Depending on where you live, sometimes you can get up into the hills, into the forest, with a very, very short drive out of town onto National Forest land or BLM land. That is the case for me in Eugene. It's a very short drive to get up into some really beautiful forested areas like this. But what I found over the years is that when you're a little too close to town, you're much more likely to stumble into some kind of sketchy situation. And I've stumbled into more than a few of them. In fact, at one point, I even had someone brandish a gun. Ever since, I have always pushed minimum 45 minutes out of town, and even better if you can be an hour plus away from a population center. Now, sometimes I am camped fairly close to small towns, but generally what I found is the further you can get away from any sort of population center, the less likely you are to stumble into any sort of sketchy looking camps, people up to no good, cooking who knows what out there in the woods. To me, it's always worth the extra drive to get away from people. And along those same lines is simply maintaining situational awareness, paying attention to what's going on around you, what you're coming up on, who might be behind you, who you're crossing paths with. Now, for all the years I've been doing this, the vast majority of people that I've encountered out in the backcountry are people just like you and me. They want to just be out enjoying nature. They also just want to be left alone. They don't want any trouble. But at the same time, I never truly let my guard down. I think about and question every single situation that I run into, and that doesn't necessarily have to involve people. That can involve trail conditions, weather conditions, anything at all that is happening around me, coming towards me, whatever, just having that awareness. And obviously that really applies whether you're out in the backcountry or you're walking down a city street. And if you're someone who's nervous about getting into the backcountry, you're probably already someone who's paying a lot of attention to that. But sometimes I'm astonished by just the absolute lack of awareness I see in people every single day in all kinds of scenarios, just clueless to what's going on around them. And those are the people who are going to be much more likely to get into some kind of trouble because they're not paying attention and actively thinking about what's happening and what could be happening. Now, in my adventure episodes, and especially springtime episodes, you often see me get into some warm, slushy snow, stop, turn around, and head the other direction. And that's one of the ways that I stay safe when I'm out by myself is I just avoid taking unnecessary risks. Now, there's a lot of times where maybe I could get through this, maybe I could get over that, but being out solo, I think it makes more sense to err on the conservative side. And as much as I like being out exploring and camping by myself, the times I have gone out with friends have been valuable also because those are the moments where I feel much more free to push the limits of my vehicle, see what they can actually do, see what I can get away with, because if something does go wrong, I've got people there to help me with a recovery, drive me back to civilization, whatever. So when I'm out by myself, I'm extra cautious and I save pushing the limits on my vehicles to when I've actually got people with me.
Now, one important way to stay safe is to not get lost and know where you're at. So that's where navigation comes in. And for my trips, I usually like to do some planning in advance so I know where I'm going to be. But even sometimes when I go out and just randomly explore, I turn here, I turn here, I turn there, having some kind of off-grid capable navigation system is really, really helpful. I use Gaia GPS on my iPhone, but there are other apps out there also that allow you to basically download map data into your device so that when you're out in the backcountry and have no cell signal, you can still actually see where you are on the map. And I don't know about other apps, but in Gaia GPS, you can also record your tracks. So when I head off randomly exploring, I can basically leave a breadcrumb trail, and worst case scenario, I can always follow that breadcrumb track back to where I started. I do have a whole dedicated video that talks about how I plan my trips and how I use my navigation devices when I'm out there, and I will put a link to that in the description below.
Now, most of what I've talked about so far has been sort of preventative, things to keep you from getting into trouble in the first place. But what if you're out there and something does go wrong? Let's talk about some things that it's good to have with you in your rig. Now, obviously, sometimes despite your best efforts to be careful, you can still end up getting stuck. It certainly happened to me a number of times. And that's why it's really important to carry recovery gear with you. When I first started exploring with my just bone stock Forester, I wanted to spend what little budget I had on modifying my car. But I grit my teeth and I bought various bits of recovery gear instead because I wanted to make sure that I could, get myself out of trouble if I needed to. Now, the number one piece of recovery gear that there's no excuse for anyone not to have in their vehicle is a shovel. Now, a shovel is useful for many things beyond recovery, but it's also a very valuable recovery gear. In many cases, simply some digging can get you unstuck. And even if it can't, if you're going to attempt something like traction boards or even winching or having someone pull you, sometimes doing some digging really makes the difference in being able to extract the vehicle. Cheap piece of gear, no reason not to have one in your vehicle. Traction boards are also a very useful tool for self-recovery, something that's relatively easy to have with you regardless of vehicle. And while I am running the Max Trax Mark II, there are much more budget options out there and they do work. I previously had a very inexpensive set of traction boards. While I actually never had to use them myself to get myself out, I did use them to get other people out, and they did work. I think the Max Trax are probably a little more durable than some of the inexpensive ones, but odds are you're probably not going to use them all that much. If you're out by yourself, I would absolutely recommend having some kind of traction boards rather than no traction board. If Max Tracks are currently outside of your budget, by all means get one of the less expensive brands. They do work. Very easy to use, very useful, maybe just the thing to get you out of a bad spot. Now, also tremendously useful if you're out by yourself and you get stuck and you need to self-recover is a winch. Here, obviously, we're getting into more expense. On top of that, you have to have obviously some way to mount it to your vehicle. That may mean some kind of a aftermarket bumper or aftermarket winch mount. And I went many, many years without a winch. All of my Forester years, no winch. And even this, I drove probably for a year and a half, had the winch mount on there, and I didn't even have a winch yet. But I have since got myself into trouble a couple of times. The winch absolutely saved my butt. I would never again go out without a winch. I'm running the Warn VR Evo 10. It's not the least expensive winch on the market, but it's also far from the most expensive. This is Warn's sort of budget line of winches. I paid about $600 for this winch. Using it just one time, probably saved me at least a $1,000 towing and recovery bill if I hadn't had it. All it takes is one use of your winch for it to pay for itself, maybe even twice over. And then every other time you get out of trouble with it, it may be saving you another and another and another massive recovery bill. You can get winches with steel line on them or winches with synthetic line. Virtually everyone I know these days goes with synthetic line. It's easier to handle. If it breaks, it's not nearly as dangerous as steel line. You'll find some old school people who say it's got to be steel, and I'm sure in the comments below someone's going to say that. But I have recovered myself many times with the synthetic line. I have seen many, many people recover themselves with synthetic line. I am running a high quality, made in the USA synthetic line from Yankum Ropes, and it has not let me down. Now, if you are going to be doing any winching, you probably need a few more things, at least a tree strap, something to go around the tree that you're going to be winching off of, and then probably some kind of shackle to connect your tree strap to your winch line. And my whole setup is designed to be metal free. Thanks to Yankum Ropes, I've got a fair lead that allows the winch line to have no metal hook on it. And then I use soft shackles to make any connections that are needed. Yankum offers a variety of versions of soft shackles, from basic ones like this to shackles that have shielding like this, up to this new sort of super heavy duty shielded soft shackle that they developed. Now, this is not a sponsored video. Yankum Ropes isn't paying me to show you all of this. If you do use my link in the description below to buy anything from Yankum Ropes, you can use my discount code SoftRoadingTheWest to bring the price down for you. And I do get a little commission from that, which is, you know, it helps keep gas in the truck. I was willing to partner with Yankum Ropes because they are an American company. They're right over in Idaho. This isn't just rebranded rope that's made someplace else. They weave this themselves. It's a family-run business, really great people. If you are looking to buy some recovery gear, I would at least check there, see if you can get some of your stuff from Yankum Ropes. Now, in the toolbox on my bumper here, I carry a bunch more what-if kind of stuff to get me out of trouble if I do get into trouble. Among it is one more item from Yankum Ropes, and that is my dynamic recovery rope. This is the sort of stretchy recovery rope that you see, for example, Casey Liddell and Matt of Matt's Offroad Recovery. They use this style of rope. In fact, they both use Yankum Ropes as well. This obviously isn't going to get you out of trouble when you're by yourself. However, if you are by yourself and someone comes along and neither of you have a recovery rope, then what are you going to do? So it's still good to have one. If you're out with buddies, you can help each other. If you're out by yourself, someone else can possibly help you, or you can possibly help someone else. Also in my toolbox here, I have the safety siphon. I use this to get gas from my jerry cans into my fuel tank without having to deal with those awkward eco spouts or even trying to hold up 5 gallons of fuel. This thing, I've used it for years. It works fantastically. Very, very affordable. Also in my toolbox is my electric chainsaw. This is a tool that serves many purposes, but it is something that can get you out of trouble. A fallen tree blocking your route being the first one that comes to mind. When it comes to chainsaws, obviously you have to find the balance between size and power. This DeWalt 20 volt with a 12-inch bar, I've used it for years. I have used it to cut trees that are bigger than the 12-inch bar. You just have to kind of go at it from a few different angles. I had always been skeptical of battery-powered chainsaws, but these have plenty of power and they run for an astonishingly long amount of time on one charge of the battery. Now, a first aid kit and a fire extinguisher should pretty much be standard equipment if you are out by yourself. In all my years of doing this, I have never actually needed to use either, but you just never know. These additionally obviously can be of assistance to other people if you come upon a situation where someone needs help. And I have been in that situation. Obviously, keep an eye on your fire extinguisher's gauge to make sure that it is still in the green. If you've never used a fire extinguisher, a good bit of preparation is just to watch a few videos and make sure you actually know how to operate one. Now, if you're out in the backcountry and you get stuck or something goes wrong with your vehicle and you can't get yourself out, or you have a medical emergency that makes it impossible for you to drive, you're in a life-threatening situation, carrying a satellite communicator is also a really good idea. It's another item that's not cheap, and you often maybe want to spend that money on something that's a little more fun, but this is a nice little bit of peace of mind. These days I'm using the Spot X. I did previously have the Garmin InReach Mini. I actually lost it. I lost it someplace down in Utah, and so I had to get another one. I decided to try the Spot X because it does have the built-in keyboard on it. That was the one thing that I really didn't like about the InReach Mini, is that while you can pair your phone with it to write messages, if you were in a situation where your phone was broken or your phone was dead, it's very, very difficult to compose any sort of custom message to someone in an emergency on the InReach Mini. And I even tried it just like at home. I wanted to just try it clear-headed. Okay, let's see if I can do it. And I struggled mightily with it. So when I had to get another one, I did get the Spot X. I have found that it works just as well as my Garmin did. It connects to the satellites in about the same amount of time, delivers messages, receives messages. Monthly plan is about the same. This is also a tool that goes back to one of the very first things that I talked about, which was keeping people informed. When I get to my campsite each night, I send a message back to my family that includes the GPS coordinates of where I am and says, here I am, I'm safe, this is where I'm camped. That way, if they stop hearing from me, I don't show up at home, they've got some sort of clue of roughly where to begin looking. Now, if you have a recent iPhone, you may have noticed that Apple has recently started offering satellite communications through their iPhones. I have not tried that yet, simply because I haven't really needed to. I've got this and I'm, paying a monthly fee for this. From what I've been able to find, the first 2 years after activation are free. Apple has not divulged what they're going to start charging once they do start charging. So I'm a little hesitant to play with it because I don't want to end up in a situation where I'm getting billed for satellite communications here while I'm also paying for satellite communications here. But that is a good feature to know about. If you have an iPhone, in an emergency, you can use satellites to get yourself some help. Now, in that scenario where perhaps you find yourself stuck, broken down, injured, unable to get yourself back to civilization, and you've called for help, but you're stuck in the wilderness for possibly days, it is a good idea to have extra food and water with you at all times. While I always prepare food for my trips to bring with me, sort of plan out my meals ahead, I do try to keep my pantry here stocked with at least a little bit of extra food. It could make the difference in getting through a few extra days if I was ever truly stuck out someplace and waiting for someone to come get me. Something else you may want to consider is simply outerwear for different types of conditions. I carry pretty much all of my jackets and coats in my truck at all times. That way I'm prepared. Now I'm up here, it's a beautiful day. I don't need my warm down waterproof coat today. I don't need my wool anorak today. But if you're out in a situation where, the weather turns on you, or you're in a situation where you do end up getting stuck, you're waiting for rescue, it's certainly good to have extra options in terms of keeping yourself warm and dry.
And one thing I want to emphasize here is that I did not buy all of this stuff at one time before I ever set foot in the wilderness. I accumulated these things over the course of years. When I first started exploring a little bit with my Forester, I had nothing. I had nothing at all. I had no navigation. I had no recovery gear. It was just me going out in the car. Bit by bit, as I could afford it, I bought additional things to equip myself and feel safer. So don't feel like you can't get out there and explore by yourself if you don't have all of this stuff. I think you can make smart decisions in terms of how far you push things versus what preparation you do have on board. But obviously, over the course of time, the more you can equip yourself, the safer you will feel, and perhaps the more you will enjoy being out solo and not feel as nervous about it.
So the final topic I want to cover here is something I get asked about a lot, and that is personal protection. Now, YouTube can be kind of funny about this topic, so I'm not going to say the word. A lot of people I know do carry something when they're out in the backcountry. Other people simply carry bear spray, or maybe even just a big stick. I think the level of personal protection that anyone is comfortable with is very much a personal thing, and it's going to vary from person to person. That's something each person has to figure out for themselves. I can't make a recommendation one way or another. I can say that in all my years of doing this, I have never been in a situation where I actually needed to defend myself in some way, whether it was from wildlife or whether it was from people up to no good. And even though, as I mentioned before, I have stumbled into some sketchy situations to the point of someone brandishing a gun, in all of those situations, simply moving on, not looking too close, just moving on, not causing any trouble, has diffused the situation every time. I have never had anyone show up in the middle of the night in my camp. I have had people roll up on me in my campsite during the day. Each of those times, it's just been people just like me out exploring, looking for some place to camp. A lot of times, stop and have a nice little chat, make a new friend. I can't say that there's not people out up to no good, but I think the further and further you get into the backcountry, into the wilderness, you're sort of beyond where those kind of people are going to roam. It seems like anyone up to no good is going to be closer to population centers. If you do choose to carry some sort of personal protection, being very well acquainted with how it works so that you're prepared to use it when you need to, can actually keep you out of trouble as well. You can end up harming yourself with your own personal protection. So make sure you know what you're doing and you're well practiced in a clear-minded state of mind, so that when the time comes, you're able to handle the situation and not get yourself in more trouble. All right, well, I hope you found that helpful or useful or interesting in some way. And again, I want to emphasize that, this is me and what I do. These are my thoughts and opinions. I certainly have not covered every single scenario, every single bit of preparation that you can do. If you feel like you want to go out and explore and camp solo, but you have trepidation about it, I would encourage you to watch other videos as well, do more reading. The more you're informed and prepared and you've thought through things, actually the less nervous you feel when you're out there, because you know, if this happens, this is what I do. If this happens, this is what I do. I love exploring and camping by myself. It is a pleasure to be out, wander through the wilderness, decide if I want to go this way, decide if I want to go that way, decide if I want to stop right here, right now, and camp in this beautiful campsite. If you have any questions about anything I talked about here, you can post them in the comments below. Thank you for watching.